Hey, it's time for FLOSS Weekly. Leo and Shawn join me. We talk with Carl Richards, the CEO of System76. We talk about laptops, desktops, and Pop! OS. You're not going to want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is FLOSS Weekly, episode 648, recorded Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. Pop! OS and System76. Hello, welcome to FLOSS Weekly. I'm Jonathan Bennett. You may notice I am not Doc Searles. We had a scheduling conflict with Doc today, but that's all right. I'm here sitting in the big chair, and we've got a couple of super great co-hosts with us today. First off, we've got Leo with us. Hey, Leo.
Hey, how you doing? I had to be here for this one. This one I wasn't going to miss.
What are you doing here?
Well, I am a little secret fan club for System76, so I had to come in.
Good to have you along. We've also got Shawn Powers with us. Shawn, how you doing?
Howdy, howdy. I'm doing well. I'm not sure I was supposed to be here, but I'm here.
No, you're supposed to be here.
Oh, okay, good.
As we like to say, you bring a certain synergy to the show whenever you're on. It's fun.
Oh, that's the nicest sounding way to say weirdness I've ever heard.
Exactly. All right, System76. Shawn, why don't you give us a quick, your history with System76. What do you know about them? And Pop! OS, too, let's not forget.
I don't know how much mic time I'll get because I have so many questions that System76 is a company that makes Linux hardware that runs Linux software. It's awesome. They have laptops and servers and they have their own custom version of Linux, Pop! OS, which you may or may not be familiar with. I am recently familiar with it, and that gives me so many more things I want to ask about because it's not controversy, but it's super interesting how they've handled packaging with relation to the Ubuntu underpinnings. So I have questions about that.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Leo, 30 seconds to tell us your relationship with System76. You got some of their hardware, don't you?
Lots of their hardware. I've been a System76 fan for, about 8-9 years. They've been around 16 years, but I bought the Oryx Pro some time ago, still use that. That's running Pop! OS right now. I have a Darter Pro sitting right in front of me, their Meerkat, which is their NUC. They make some great hardware, and I love it that it's Linux first, because as you know, I'm Linux first too. So it's just a natural for me. So I'm really looking forward to this. And by the way, I'm really interested in what they're doing with Pop! OS and Cosmic, their new desktop. Oh, I also think we should talk about the fact that they're getting rid of Intel firmware on here and the boot. They're using open source booting software, Core Boot, and so forth. So I think that's very interesting as well.
Yeah, I think an hour is not going to be long enough to cover all of this because I have questions too. Questions about AMD even and building computers in-house rather than white boxing. But we'll get to all of that. In fact, we've got Carl. We'll bring him on here in just a second. Before we do, I want to let everybody know about TWiT Plus and Club TWiT. It's $7 a month. And it gets you access to a lot for $7 a month. You get the Discord, I think, is the biggest thing. You can chat live with hosts, with everybody else during the show. You also get access to a ad-free version of the shows. You get your own RSS feed where you can pull down the shows. You don't have to listen to the ads. In fact, if you're TWiT Plus, you don't even have to listen to this ad. It'll get edited out. We've got some fun things that are going on just on Discord. Occasionally, some of the hosts get on and do a little bit of gaming live. You can stay tuned for that. We have the Untitled Linux Show, which we're not sure what we want to be when we grow up yet, but we have a lot of fun. It's kind of like a Linux users group gets together on Discord every Saturday. All that stuff is available. It's a lot of fun. It's only $7 a month. You need to get on it. Be part of Club TWiT. And with that, we're going to bring Carl on. Carl, welcome to the show. We're glad you're here.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
And Carl, let's start with, we like to get the 30,000 foot view first. And we've got, I think, two different things that we're talking about, which is really sort of the same. System76 and then Pop! OS. Give us the quick version of what those are and what you guys decided to do.
Right. So System76, we're a hardware manufacturer. We have a laptop line, desktop, and server line. We started System76 because we felt like Linux had reached a point where it was better than the proprietary options that were out there, but it wasn't well represented by hardware manufacturers. And so that's why we founded the company to start with. And so for many years, we exclusively shipped Ubuntu on all of our hardware. And then in 2017, we decided we wanted to invest more in the desktop experience for our customers. And so we started Pop! OS, our own Linux distribution that would be the flagship that we shipped on our products.
Yeah, and so you guys, if I understand correctly, for the first handful of years, your company, System76 hardware, was not actually made by you guys. You were essentially white labeling them. Is that correct? And what's changed?
Right. Yeah, and that's pretty typical of computer manufacturing. Actually, Flextronics makes Apple products, and there's other ODMs. ODMs are original design manufacturers. OEMs are the companies that pick out amongst the designs which ones they feel will work best for their customers, and then apply their branding and style to the product. So for a big OEM like HP or Dell, they have lots of flexibility with how much they have, how much of an effect they have on the design of the product. For System76, we have less so. And that's something that always kind of bothered us. It wasn't the goal was to be able to provide the best product for our customers, and we couldn't always do that when we were negotiating with other regions about what displays we wanted and so forth, instead of just defining them. And so about 5 years ago, we started the process of building a factory in Denver. And we started with desktops, a little bit easier form factor to work with. And so we started designing and manufacturing our own desktop products in-house. That project was is designed to spread to the rest of the product line. So we moved on to the Launch keyboard, where we design that and manufacture it in-house. And that project is to learn precision milling and some of the processes that we'll need to understand in moving into laptops. So our next step as a company is taking the institutional knowledge we've gained and the investment we've made in manufacturing and applying that to laptops.
So is there a laptop that you guys have made in-house that's available right now?
None that we manufacture in-house, no.
How much do you, this is Leo, I was wondering how much you customize those Clevo laptops. I have them all. You look at, I've gone to Clevo just to see, as you said, as an ODM, they have, you choose what you want, but I'm wondering how much you customize it. Right.
So we have a pretty distinct product line. Our intent is to have a laptop line that covers, like long battery life, ultra portable, all the way up to super powerful desktop performance in a laptop. So less portable, but high performance. And so we work with Clevo on which models fit within that line in different areas. And there's a lot of models even between those two. And then we work on the individual BOM for each one of those models. So that's going to be what kind of webcam it has, what kind of display, touchpad, other components. And so we make certain decisions about that, the battery size, and we work with the BOM and the cost of different things to determine the right collection of components that go into the product.
I'm sure, of course, most of their other customers are making Windows machines. What's involved that is different making a Linux machine?
Nothing really, actually.
Really? Nowadays, no. Huh?
It's all the same stuff.
Yeah.
All the same components. What's different is that for a typical Windows customer, Clevo is doing much more work for them than they are for us. So They're writing all the drivers for that customer. They don't write drivers for us.
Interesting.
So we take those schematics and we write firmware and drivers for the hardware, so that it has the same performance, power optimization, and other characteristics that you would expect from a Windows machine, but for Linux first.
When you guys first started building these, did you start Pop! OS at the same time that you started System76, or did that come later?
That came much later. So we started System76 in 2005, shipped exclusively Ubuntu on all of our hardware until 2017. In October of 2017 is when we introduced Pop!
And so what kind of led to that decision? What was the problem you were trying to solve that led to wrapping up your own distro?
Well, at that time, Ubuntu had they made the announcement that they were going to drop Unity and move to GNOME. What we felt was happening at that time, and for understandable reasons. I don't want to give the wrong impression. I love Canonical and Ubuntu. I think they're fantastic projects with all the right, doing everything for the right reasons. The amount of open source software that Canonical and the team over there created, along with the rest of the community, is just phenomenal. The way they move things forward. But at that time, it was clear that Canonical was a cloud company where server and cloud is where their business is, and where probably a lot of their focus should be. For us, it's continued to be the desktop and it remains the desktop. So we need a quality, holistic product that we're shipping to our customers every day. With what was Canonical pulling back the investment on the desktop, we wanted to push the investment forward. It's our key product. It's what we love and do every day. And we had a lot of problems or things that we wanted to solve in a Linux desktop that weren't being solved. And we thought we could do better if we were taking on that work ourselves.
Why Ubuntu? Why not Debian or even Arch? Why did you choose Ubuntu?
Well, in 2005 is when that decision started, and then the choices were between Red Hat, SUSE, Ubuntu.
Debian was around, obviously, because Ubuntu is based on Debian. Yeah, right,
and quite a few others. But what I liked about Ubuntu was the polish that they put around the product and the speed with which it moved. So Debian is famous for its stability, but one of the trade-offs that I think isn't necessary really is that they would trade off moving packages forward for that idea around stability. But in reality, if you throw the right amount of QA and the right amount of QA people and investment towards it, you can have both rapidly moving packages and a lot of stability. And that's what Ubuntu did that was different than Debian as a core.
Yeah. I love. I'm just gonna say I love Pop! OS. I just want to put in the plug, and I've recommended it especially for people new to Linux. It's such a polished distro. It installs so easily. You're not dogmatic about free versus non-free. So for people with NVIDIA systems, it just works out of the box. There's very little hardware that Pop! OS can't handle. So it's a really good choice for a distro. You do a great job with it.
I appreciate that.
I just started using Pop! OS, I have to admit. So I was pleasantly surprised that when I installed it, first of all, I'm not a big fan of Snap and Flatpak, maybe because I'm old. I prefer Debian packages. It just feels more normal, and I'm old. But when I went into the Pop! OS store, or whatever it's called, I don't remember, I noticed that Flatpaks on an Ubuntu system are the default. And I have to say, not only is that a bold choice, it's actually kind of difficult to do. Getting Flatpak to work on Ubuntu is not a simple command line execution. So hats off for making it smooth. But that must have been a conscious effort. And I'm curious what the rationale was there. Was it was on purpose, but why? Or was that just one of your devs prefers Flatpak, so that's the way it went?
It's actually quite simple. So when it comes to the technology itself, Flatpak versus Snap, I think that they're equivalent technologically. I think they're both great solutions. Solutions to the problem being that the underlying OS needs to move at a different rate than the applications on top of it. And so it enables those applications to move independent of the underlying operating system. An advantage for Snap is we think that they did the command line tools in a better design. You can use Snaps for command line tools. You can't do that for Flatpak. Flatpak is designed entirely for desktop GUI applications. So that was one advantage for Snap that we're not getting with Flatpak. The reason that we chose Flatpak was because the FlatHub store is open source, and the Snap store is proprietary. Oh. And we didn't want to inject a proprietary store and deliver it to our customers out of the box in the product we were building. That's the only reason. And I like both technologies. And so so we're a little bit at an inflection point about how we will necessarily move forward, both with Flatpack and Snap, because I want to give our customers the most options available and make it easy for them to choose what they'd like. At the same time, I'm not too keen to put someone else's store in our OS.
Yeah, that's a noble reason.
We've got questions coming in. So we've got a couple of chat rooms going on here. We've got the old IRC and then the new Discord. From IRC, Phoenix Warp says, question, did they experience the COVID bump in sales for their product due to people working from home like Windows and Mac providers did?
We did, yes, indeed. Both the COVID bump in 2020 and the silicon shortage in 2021. So we're getting both of those.
And then from Discord, Mashed Potato asks, here's a slightly tongue-in-cheek question. When do you think the year of the Linux desktop will actually arrive?
It's here.
I don't know if it's not here already.
It's here. It's obviously here.
The things are so different than they once were. Chromebooks are obviously infiltrating schools and homes. Windows still ships on most hardware, but I think that what Chromebooks has proven is that isn't necessarily a foregone conclusion. We have opportunities to reach customers with great products. I think it's a matter of determining the right time. Our approach to the Linux, the year of the Linux desktop, is let's make the very best products Linux can be for people that use it to build things. And over enough time, then we will expand into a more mainstream market by being successful at the things that we're really good at first.
I should point out that I did not bring in this System76 laptop just for this interview. This is what's sitting in front of me. This is a Darter Pro. It's sitting in front of me all the time. But it's also not running, and you're not going to like this, Carl, it's not running Pop! OS. I run Manjaro on this one. But I say that to make the point that System76 laptops are good for any version of Linux. And I even imagine BSD probably runs just fine on them as well.
What we're happy about is delivering hardware that works well with Linux.
Yeah.
You put another. I love distros. I don't think there can be too many distros. I don't think there can be. I think that is the wellspring of our innovation as a community, and so it doesn't bother me one bit what's running on the hardware. I just want it to work well for you.
There was a big kerfuffle, of course, when GNOME 40 came out, and you know how people are. They don't like change. You guys do something called Cosmic, which it's essentially GNOME, right?
Cosmic was actually our answer to GNOME 40.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
we were. We are on the GNOME design team, and so we were in the discussions up to GNOME 40's release, and we had our reservations. They were well known. We actually we presented our Cosmic desktop concepts. We thought through things like what would you want to change if you were to adapt GNOME to a phone, or Ubuntu, who likes to have a dash on the left side, or how do we need to operate with touch interfaces? Should we start offering touch laptops in the future, or even mobile devices with GNOME? And so we thought that we had it pretty well thought out, but I think we were just simply on the design team too late, and that the GNOME 40 designs had started much earlier, and so the team wasn't as open to considering a different approach.
The thing that you do, which I really love, is the System76 GNOME extension, which essentially adds tiling to GNOME. That is spectacular. Was that kind of in a response to them not including this kind of stuff in GNOME 40, and so you said, well, we're going to make an extension that does it?
Yeah, everything that we do is just responding to our customers' needs. We're very, very customer-centric. And all of our engineers, before we brought tiling to GNOME and to Pop! OS, all of our engineers were actually on i3. And then I went to
a tiling DE, which...
Yeah, and what really struck me was when I went to Google for an open firmware conference. We were giving the keynote at the conference, and then we had a booth there, and so we spent a couple of days on campus, and most of the people coming up to me were also on i3 or Sway.
Interesting.
It became pretty clear to me that the core market that we care about most, being software engineers and engineering disciplines, need that type of functionality in their operating system. And so we wanted to give it to them in a way that was both as productive as it is in i3 and Sway, but also as easy to opt in so people can learn how to use it, instead of it being a little bit of a kind of a learning curve moving into one of those DEs.
Yeah, and actually, I love what you've done because I can turn it on and off.
Yeah.
And so I can be tiled for those times when I'm using Emacs and coding and stuff like that. But when I'm gaming, I go full screen. I mean, it's a sensible way to do it. I think you've done a great job.
Right. Yeah, I'm almost always tiling. It's kind of an exception. And then you also find that you start doing things like if you're on an ultra wide, floating windows are impossible to manage.
Oh, crazy.
It just doesn't work. Yeah. But with tiling, it pops them all into place for you. And the more you start using tiling, when you start using different things like when you use tablets or phones like iOS or Android, you'll notice that they're in essence they are actually tiling things. They just are. Most things are full screen all the time.
Right.
You start using some of the multitasking they're trying to work in. It's actually very similar to tiling as well. We think we think that the folks that came up with i3 and Sway and designed it really nailed the way it works. And we just wanted to make it an opt-in and easy to, a little bit easier to use, perhaps, both mouse-driven and keyboard-driven, and eventually it'll be touch-driven as well.
It's both the blessing and curse of GNOME is extensions. You can get in a lot of trouble with them, and yet the extensibility of the desktop is incredible.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely true. It enabled us to experiment with something and without requiring too much work to try something new in the market and see how customers responded to it. And because it was opt-in, it was it was easy to provide. And then if customers don't like it, they could just not use it. But now we found like something about 70 to 75% of our customers use the tiling functionality. So it's been widely adopted by customers. The problem with extensions is that any other extension can step over your extension, and there's no safety between them.
Right.
So it's very easy to break things. I do think long term that there are ways to separate each of these portions of functionality so that they wouldn't step on each other. And we're starting to experiment with some things along those lines as well.
So I saw a screenshot on Reddit just a few days ago where someone was running KDE in Pop! OS. Humorously, they called it K-pop, and I thought that was cute. I'm curious, though, what is the support for KDE, and do some of y'all's fun extensions that you've written also work on KDE?
They don't work on KDE. Some of them do. Man, I'm at a loss on KDE, honestly. So some people here at System76, a lot of people run all sorts of different DEs. So there's lots of KDE folks here, and there's people running. No one's forced to run Pop unless you're working directly on it, and obviously you want to be running it. But what we want to do is right now we're writing extensions for GNOME. So if you want to put Pop Shell or Pop tiling into GNOME, it's as simple as installing it. But it doesn't have to be DE specific. So we've already rewritten Pop Shell as Pop tiling as a separate Rust project. Oh. And Pop tiling will be, we're designing it so it's portable across DEs. So you'll be able to write an extension to KWin to add Pop tiling to KDE. Same with GNOME or XFCE or any other desktop environment. So yeah, we're breaking these pieces out so they're portable, so they can be used in different distributions. Our strategy there is we want more people using tiling. We think that would be fantastic because it also means applications will be more responsive if a lot more people are using them. So we want to bring this this kind of functionality and technology to any DE that would like to implement it.
That's quite clever. Actually, Manjaro ships with the System76 extension as part of its GNOME distro. So
right.
It's great.
And this work will make it easier for them to ship it. It doesn't even have to be in GNOME. They can ship it in the different versions of Manjaro.
Are you a Rust house? Do you do a lot of the stuff in Rust?
Yeah, everything we do is in Rust.
Oh, wow.
Smart.
Yeah. So I'm real curious. I didn't know you guys shipped servers. And when you send out a server, does it have Pop! OS on it? Or do you guys have a different distro that you prefer for servers?
Servers are shipped with Ubuntu.
Okay.
I suspect there will be a Pop server.
There's a tip, little hint. I would think you know, Carl, but okay, we won't push on that.
There's experimentation has to happen, and we have a vision for where we're going over the next few years, and things you have to experiment and see how it goes along the way. If the experimentation goes the way that we expect, then we think that we will probably.
What would you be adding? I mean, obviously the Pop! OS is largely a desktop, masterpiece where it affects so many things in the desktop. But on a server, what sorts of additions are you experimenting with, if you can reveal that?
Well, what we're thinking about is kind of separating the way we think about Pop! OS instead of just being one desktop kind of monolith ISO. We'll have a Pop! OS core, which is essentially a server operating system. And then when you install Pop Desktop, that installs the desktop operating system on top of it. But with that new approach, we would be getting Pop Server essentially by default out of the way that we're orchestrating the operating system. And then some of the things that we do for value add, particularly with drivers like NVIDIA, we'd be able to do that for servers. So our customers that are using machine learning or GPUs for machine learning and AI would have a server operating system optimized for machine learning out of the box.
We got to talk about the Theo, because this is such a beautiful desktop with actual wood, and you can choose the kind of wood you want and so forth. Has this been popular? I mean, it must have been risky launching this.
Yeah, it was. We had to build a factory, and that's expensive. There's
you make them in Colorado.
It's in Colorado, and outside of this store behind me, or on the other side of the room, there's 20 by 15-foot lasers. There's mills. There are brakes. All the machinery to bring in raw materials like that. That desktop there on the screen is a flat piece of aluminum that comes through a door and is transformed into that here in Colorado.
God. You bend it around. Walnut, birch, something called dark matter, Neptune blue, and Martian red. They're gorgeous. This is my aspirational computer down the road. This is the one I want on my desktop.
And are these actual chunks of wood? I mean, this isn't just like a wood-like sticker that you put on top of the aluminum?
No, it's actual wood veneer. So, in our fact, so we also get 4x8 sheets of veneer that comes in, and so it's real walnut and real birch. It's backed with a 3M adhesive, and what we do is we cut it into slices that are dependent on which model it's going on, different heights, and we stain the walnut with linseed oil and the birch with linseed oil for dark matter and Martian red and Neptune blue. Those are stained first. To their color, the birch stained to that color, and then they're wrapped around the machine, and then we add polyurethane afterwards. We have to do the poly afterwards because if you wrap it around the machine after doing the polyurethane, you get cracks along it, so it seals it. It seals it in place while it's already wrapped around.
Huh. So let's talk for a minute about firmware. I know we talked at the beginning of the show about some of the things you guys do to customize the machines. Something you've done for a long time is putting open firmware on the devices you ship out the door. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Right.
So it started, we've always wanted to do open firmware. And it's astonishing to me that we're actually here now. When we started 16 years ago, I thought it would be such a stretch to do firmware. And so it's quite astonishing that we're able to do it now. But it started out first as a desire, something that we wanted to do and did some experimentation with, but we were concerned that we might be able to bring up one model, but then we're a 0-day manufacturer, which means once the new Intel processor and chipsets come out, we want to ship that to our customers on the same day. So we would have to have the upstream relationships with Intel and other silicon manufacturers to provide that 0-day support in core boot, meaning that we ship you a Darter Pro today, and you're ready to upgrade in 2 years, once that new one comes out, it's going to have core boot. We're not going to have a gap where we have to go back to proprietary. And fortunately, Intel actually reached out to us, and they said, we'd like to partner with you on open firmware. And they came in, they flew into Denver. They gave us a presentation it was an 8-hour presentation about doing open firmware. And the next morning they came in and said, so will you do this with us? And said, you had us at open firmware. Well, yeah, of course we will. And so, and they are fantastic to work with, by the way. I love the firmware team over there. We have an open Slack channel where if we have questions, we need help, we ask them. And then we're kind of the experts in particularly Rust implementations with inside of firmware, and so they reach out to us to work on when they have questions about those portions of developing firmware. So with those relationships and the work we've done, that does the booting up of the system. That's a considerable part of it, but it's also smaller than the part that actually that people interact with more. And that's the embedded controller. And that's where a lot of the magic really happens. So you can have core boot, but that doesn't mean your firmware is open source, because you might be using closed source embedded controller, which controls things like your keyboard, your hotkeys, your thermal management, power management, battery, charge levels. All of those are managed inside of the embedded controller. And so we didn't think it was enough just to do booting and hardware initialization. We next tackled embedded firmware or embedded controllers, and now that code is liberated as well, which also is quite fascinating because we get a lot of contributions to our open firmware projects, like customers that wanted to help improve the fan curves, and they just hobbyists came up with improvements that we were able to incorporate and ship to all of our customers.
So cool. I have to say, I bought this Starter Pro when you first announced open source firmware, and because of that. And it's been great. There's been no issues at all. It's fantastic. So if anybody's nervous about the idea, nothing to fear. It really works.
It's the opposite, really.
Yeah, I think so. It's better.
Battery life is better.
Yeah.
Suspend consumes less power.
Yeah.
We understand every toggle and switch that's happening inside of the hardware, and so we can adjust it and optimize it in ways that weren't possible before.
Are there any really fun tricks that you guys are able to do because you've got the open firmware? I know there's things like in core boot, you can skip grub and boot directly to your kernel. I'm curious, are there any really fun things that you guys do like that?
So we can do some of those things that enable faster booting. I don't believe we're doing in kernel or kernel in the firmware yet for various reasons, but we might get there. One example is battery thresholds, for instance, because we're doing our own embedded controller, and we don't have to depend on. Oh no, there's even more than that. There's really cool stuff. So there's battery thresholds, which means we can. We're working on adding a GUI into GNOME settings where you'll be able to say, only charge my battery up to 80%. This is the kind of thing where you can increase the longevity of your battery by, if you're plugged in regularly, not charging it to 100% all the time. So that's the kind of thing that we can do. The other thing that's really neat is if you install System76 keyboard configurator, you can now customize your keyboard to whatever layout you want. You can move the keys around on your laptop keyboard and program it with the System76 keyboard configurator. And that's thanks to open firmware, and it is stored in the firmware. So every reboot, your keyboard is customized to precisely what you want.
And so I've heard a story that you guys on some of your machines actually support disabling the Intel management engine, which some people really care about. I know there's some we could call them conspiracy theories, but people are understandably nervous about closed source Intel code running on their machine all the time. What's the story with IME on System76?
Yeah, I think that's certainly reasonable. We prefer to turn off the ME because we want all open source firmware initializing all the hardware. But so for most of our models that have S3 suspend, the ME is disabled. But suspend is moving from the S3 standard to SOIX, and with SOIX, the ME is required. We're not able to disable the ME and enable SOIX suspend. So we're kind of at a crossroads where we may not be able to continue disabling the ME until a new workaround has been found.
And what about support for AMD? I know they have something similar to the management engine. You guys have some AMD hardware. What's the state of core boot and open firmware on your management stuff, and then also turning off AMD's equivalent of the management engine?
Right. So I don't know of a method to disable AMD's equivalent ME. There are projects for porting core boot to AMD, and Google is leading a lot of those because of Chromebooks. We participated in some discussions with them, but it's just been slow moving. That we need more support from AMD to really make that happen, similar to what we have with Intel. It's my hope, and AMD is in a little bit of a different place. They're dealing with rapid growth and acceleration growth, how you manage that. Intel's working on getting back to growth. And so I think when you think about their internal focuses as companies, AMD is kind of handling the things that they need to because of everything coming at them right away. And open firmware isn't at the same place that it is with Intel right now.
So you have the awesome wood veneer machines. You also, though, have fairly unique keyboards. I'm curious, you talked about rearranging the keys on the laptops. Does the same thing hold true with your actual physical, like, desktop keyboards? Do those pop off and they can be reprogrammed in the Theo machines? They look cool. I love that you actually have the super clicky and less super clicky, which I'm sure those are not the terms you use. But
tactile. We call them tactile.
Tactile and something else.
Super clicky and tactile.
But they're great. I didn't even know they lit up. How that makes them even fit. They'd go in my office with all the lighting that I have here. But I assume the keycaps come off. I mean, that's not a huge new idea. But if you do that, can you then program in the computer so that it sticks on reboot, or is that strictly a laptop endeavor?
This actually started with the launch keyboard and moved into laptops. It just happened to be that because we had open firmware on laptops, we could enable the keyboard configurator we were writing for launch to work on our laptops at the same time. So if you have a launch keyboard and you plug it into your Darter, when you open up the System76 keyboard configurator, you're going to see your Darter keyboard and a button to configure it, and you're going to see your launch keyboard and a button to configure that keyboard. And when you configure them, it has nothing to do with the operating system. All of that programming goes onto the chip itself, onto the product itself. So it's in the Darter's firmware, it's in the launch keyboard's firmware. So you can move your launch keyboard from product to product, and your key map is the same no matter where you go, or from computer.
Oh, so it's not the computer's firmware, that it's actually in the keyboard itself. That's pretty cool.
Precisely right. All those settings are stored there, so you can move it around, and nothing. Yeah, it doesn't change. And yes, you can move caps wherever you want. We include a keycap puller, so you can rearrange them. I'm pretty partial to our layout. We kind of designed it to work with Pop! OS. And we designed it so your thumbs are much more useful.
Yeah, you split the space bar. Why is that for that reason?
Well, there's kind of two things going on that bottom row. What we noticed first for the space bar was that in our user testing, most people only use their right thumb or their left thumb for space. Yeah. And with that being the case, we thought it would make sense to split it so you could use the other one. Like if you think about if you're 95% typer, you're still going up to backspace with your pinky way up there 5% of the time. How about if that was just right next to your strongest digit, next to your thumb?
Ooh, it's an Emacs lover's keyboard, I have to say. Especially love any keyboard that doesn't have a Windows logo on it. Instead, it says
that was my question
super.
too. Does it say super? I was curious what it was going to be instead of Windows.
you need to rename all to Meta and caps to Control, and then I'll be happy.
Well, you see that super key is right to the left of the space bar.
Yeah.
And now the reason for that is with pop tiling. If you move your thumb a little bit to the left and hold down super, and you press H, J, K, and L, you're now moving around all of your windows.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can navigate your windows much more quickly than doing Alt Tab, 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 try to figure out which one's the right one and get to the window you're looking for. Instead of doing that, it's actually all spatially laid out, and you're just using your thumb and your home row to navigate your windows.
Keyboard nerds are worse than Linux nerds, so you'll forgive us for all of this. You choose these switches. These are, what is it, Kale Box Royal switches? What are
Kale? Yeah, they're Kale Box. That's right, and they're Royals and Jades.
Jade? Yeah.
The Royals are quieter, but they still have that nice tactile feel. But you don't have to bottom them out to get a key press, which means you can type very quickly. The same with the Jade. You don't have to bottom those out, but you get a nice clicky response from it. So,
which is more popular?
The Royals are much more popular.
Yeah. Yeah, I like a clicky myself, but
I like clicky at the factory, and I like Royal at home.
Yeah, because in fact, I can't use clicky here because people will know I'm Googling the answer to their question. So I have to use the quiet keyboard for that. I'm not familiar.
I have a Mac keyboard with like no resistance at all. I can quietly, silently look smart.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this Kale. Most people use Cherry or another kind. Is this a newer switch company?
They've been around for quite some time. They're now, I think, we have very enthusiastic
keyboard nerds,
expert keyboard nerds here.
Yep.
And according to their analysis, Kale Box is currently the best products available.
Oh, good. I'm set. I'm sold. Because this is an expensive keyboard. I mean, you have to be kind of a keyboard nerd when you can get a $5 keyboard to spend $250 on a keyboard.
It is a high quality keyboard, and it's expensive. $285 is it's along the range of any other high end keyboard out there. But we also add extra features that aren't in those other keyboards.
Specifically for System76 hardware or for Linux?
Just the keyboard itself.
Oh.
So if you plug the keyboard into a USB 3.2 hub, you get 10 gigabits per second out across the hub of the keyboard. So the keyboard has a built-in hub. Theo doesn't have ports in the front. And we wanted to keep it nice and clean.
Oh,
and
elegant.
We thought the best place for the ports was at the keyboard. It's much more convenient than even going to wherever your desktop is and under your desk or on top of your desk and plugging something in. So there's a 4-port hub on there that has 2 USB-C ports and 2 USB-A ports. And that's unique to have that many ports for one, but the thing that no other keyboard has is that it's 10 gigabits per second. So you can transfer a terabyte of data in 15 minutes. Any other keyboard on the market would take 15 hours.
So it looks like, I'm looking at the back, it looks like how many ports? There's 3 C ports and there's 2 A ports, it looks like. It's 5 total. One's obviously used.
Yeah.
One must be to plug it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the center C is for the PC.
So 4 extra ports. That's nice. And I like it that's Type C too.
Now, these are not powered then, right? But I suppose because it's C, you could probably inject some power at some point, or?
That requires additional circuitry that's not there. So you get to the typical 5 watts or the amount of power USB devices, but not charge phones.
So over in Discord, this is kind of a different topic, but I have several people asking me about it. What's the story on getting support for System76 devices, and how does that work internationally?
So we have a rather large support team, and we have phone support, ticket support, and it's actually pretty simple. Just you log into your account and you click a button and ask us a question.
Yeah, I've used the support. It's very good. And you ship to how many countries?
I believe it's 62 countries.
We have a New Zealand listener who says you ship to New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah. So our customers are for international. We've found that we've had some occasions where we use Google Translate to work with customers. Most of the time, though, we're working with customers in English, and so. But either way, we're here to help our
for
customers.
Hardware support. Do you ship it back to the States or?
It depends. So if your if a memory module goes bad, we believe in this, right repair and the ability for our customers to repair our products. So we have very detailed manuals, and if our customer feels comfortable with changing out a drive or memory or even the display, we'll send them the hardware.
Oh, that's awesome.
They can change it out and send us the bad part back.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
We did mention support. So I'm curious, because you have a lot of open firmware stuff that you do differently than other companies, open doesn't necessarily mean clear to everybody. All of the changes that you make, like with battery stuff, is it directly supported by you? I mean, do customers call in and say, okay, I screwed up my firmware, and I can't just Google the answer because this isn't the same thing that 100,000 other people on the planet have dealt with. So, do you find yourself dealing with those sort of issues directly? I mean, again, it's open, so I mean, it's not as though it's proprietary and you hold the magic key, but you do hold the knowledge that might not be as easily accessible for other stuff out there.
Right. Our customers are entirely free to break their machine. However you'd like, you can download the firmware, you can make changes, and you can reload different firmware. And this isn't the kind of changing the firmware isn't something that you're just going to do using the product. You're going to go to the GitHub page, you're going to clone it, you're going to go and look at the code, make changes to the code, and then reinstall it on your computer. That there are things you can brick it. It's possible. But that's and so we wouldn't provide warranty support or be able to provide warranty support for breaking the machine. But if it just doesn't work anymore because you're experimenting with something, we will help you get back to just up and running again with the System76 firmware.
So I see there are some instructions there. Yeah.
Also from Discord, we have another question: how repairable are the laptops? And he says, "What could I have fail and not be able to replace on my own?"
Yeah. Okay. So all of our panels use it's just regular Phillips screws on the bottom. So you take those apart. Everything can be taken apart entirely. You can take the keyboard out. You can take all the parts, the motherboard, the display, camera modules. All of those things can be easily replaced. I would think something that even the motherboard could be changed out if you wanted to do that.
You'd have to ship me a new one, obviously.
We'd ship you a new one, then you'd ship us the old one back, and that would be that would be it.
Yeah, Phillips screws all around. I love that. I don't have to have a special screwdriver or anything.
Yeah, it's only a matter of your comfort level. That's it.
Can you change the fan without having to pull the heatsink off?
Oh man, I'm sure that depends on the model.
Yeah.
I can't tell you.
Yeah, when you get things smaller and smaller, it gets a little harder and harder, really.
With all the talk about shipping, has the worldwide supply chain issue been a hurdle for you? I mean, you mentioned you put wood on computers at the time when I've been to Home Depot. I mean, I don't want it to have to buy wood. And but I mean, just getting any computer parts is difficult. I see you're kind of bragging with your background, like just piled with hardware, so maybe you're the reason that we can't order things. But
this year has been a nightmare for all of us. Everything is difficult. The launch keyboard has been really challenging. We can't get 2 set parts that we need to, like voltage regulators, to make more PCBs, or the ETA is a year out. In all of our 16 years, I've never seen anything like this. It is a constant struggle. So our procurement team they're working hard just to try to stay on top of it and keep shipping product. But it's definitely very challenging.
I like the Flex, though. You're sitting in front of quite a few NVIDIA.
Empty boxes, let's be honest.
Those are all okay.
So we did have a question earlier that I thought I wanted to cover. In Pop! OS, we kind of have a two-headed discussion here about the two things. In Pop! OS, do you guys actually work with upstream projects? So, you occasionally get into these situations where, there's an upstream project and something happens and there hasn't been a release in 10 years and, but there's security patches. I'm just curious, do you guys have like an in-house QA team for the software that steps in and deals with stuff like that? Or do you pretty much just rely on the upstream Ubuntu to take care of that stuff?
Oh, yeah, we have a QA team. And the QA team is responsible for Pop! OS as well as our hardware. So they have almost every project we have, if not every project, has a QA checklist that before it's ever released. So our process is a feature goes into design. And after design and consultation with engineering, it goes into the engineering queue to be developed. After it's developed, it goes through a code review from a second engineer, and it goes to the QA team. Both of those have to sign off before it ships to the customer. So every piece of code that we create is tested by the QA team before it ships out.
And I have to say, having bought 5 System76 computers over the last 5 years, I've never had a problem one. They've all been fantastic. I actually had to make up reasons to post some support tickets.
Yeah, I think we do. We feel like we could always be better, though. Even I know we deliver a really good product, but there's always room to improve.
Of course, yeah.
We want to take it even further. We want to make these things bulletproof.
So I'm curious. Go ahead, Shawn. Go ahead.
Well,
go ahead, Shawn. I was going to start wrapping.
Your factory for building the machines. Are you also building the keyboards in house then? Because you mentioned the difficulty getting parts, but it sounded like tiny, like got to solder parts, not our keyboards aren't shipping. Is that all? You built all of those as well?
Right. We don't make PCBs. So what we bring in, we do manufacture the keyboard here. There are parts. It's not that dissimilar than the desktop. We don't make motherboards for the desktop. You see the Asus motherboards right back here that we use on. I think that's a Theo Major. So we don't make we design the PCB. What is different about Launch is that we design the PCB, and the PCB is open source. So its schematics and its entire design can be downloaded. You can see how everything works. You can adapt it if you'd like. You can make your own PCBs and Launch keyboards. It's all open hardware. Here we bring in all the metal. We mill the metal. We paint the metal. We do all and then we do all the final assembly. So we put the PCB in, the switches, and the caps, and then we package it up, QA, and ship.
Wow.
So I'm about to start wrapping on this. I see one question from the chat room that I think is funny, and I'll ask: Eric Duckman says, does the stigma that Linux is only for old, worn-out machines hurt your sales?
No, not at all. We find that it's quite the opposite. Really, our customers depend on their computers for their work. Really, and so if the computer is slowing them down, then they've got a problem. So we find that our customers want really high-end, high-performance systems.
And the worse Windows gets, the more intrusive, the more ads, the more security flaws, the more attractive a PC with Linux looks. I have to say, a brand new one.
I think we're in a great place as a community, as a movement. Openness in software and firmware. You imagine that the computer is the most versatile, powerful thing that's ever been created, and to lock that up behind and the knowledge of how to make it powerful behind proprietary software doesn't make sense anymore. And then people are all coming around to that.
I agree.
We feel the same about hardware. We want to do the same things. I think it feels like 1993 open hardware today. We're at the very early stages of that, and I hope that we can build something very similar to what's happened in software.
I know you want to wrap, Jonathan, but before the show, you mentioned something about moving to a RISC-based processors. Is there an open hardware movement in processors as well?
RISC-V, I think, has a huge amount of momentum behind
Interesting.
it. A lot of people are excited about it, and I think we've got a long road to go there, but we might be able to liberate silicon. It would be
would be phenomenal.
Tremendous movement to be able to do so, and that means we're doing the hardware today. We're doing some PCB schematics. We're doing firmware. We're doing the operating system. There are some blobs mixed in there that but from when we started 16 years ago, we've made tremendous strides. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when we have RISC-V as well, and that's a real option for laptops and desktops.
Very exciting, boys, and I'm sure you'll be among the first to ship RISC-V hardware.
Yeah, we're experimenting with it.
Wow. Nice.
It's kind of funny. This is a slight tangent, but AMD about a week ago came out and said, "Oh, hey, by the way, if anybody wants us to make ARM or RISC-V chips, we're totally down for that." So AMD and Intel are getting on board that too. It's funny.
Intel, I think it was very telling when Paul O'Neill, Intel CEO, said that they were talking about their foundries, and this was the foundry decision to keep their foundries rather than split it off. And he said he mentioned specifically RISC-V there. So that says to me that their customers are talking about it, because otherwise, why would you mention it?
Very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So I want to wrap. I had a very important, maybe the most important question that we'll ask today. What is the deal with the Pop! OS name? Where did that come from? And why are there symbols in the name of your OS?
Yeah. It's a lot of typing, I got to tell you.
I just type Pop. I just call it Pop.
Yeah.
But we take our responsibility to our customers very seriously as professionals, but we don't take ourselves.
Pop _OS exclamation mark. Absolutely the
best. We want this to be fun. We want computers to be fun. And so, yeah, it's not computer operating system 2.0. No, go out there and have fun with it.
Awesome.
All right. So final questions to wrap. These are similarly not to be taken entirely too seriously. When are you guys bringing blockchain to Pop! OS and System76?
We already have, actually.
Oh.
I know you wouldn't expect an answer like this, but we use a blockchain technology for firmware security here. So the different independent systems have to sign and artifacts have to match. We use blockchain for that. So there you go.
That is cool.
Very cool. Blockchain exists in a lot of places. People don't expect it to. One of the first killer features of blockchain was Git.
Right.
Anyway, favorite scripting language and favorite text editor?
Vim for text editing. Scripting language. I know one that we've been using. I don't know.
I like it that you're a Rust house. I think that actually gives me some confidence, really.
When we have to work in JavaScript, GNOME shell drives us kind of nuts.
Yeah.
And so we actually write a lot of our extensions in TypeScript instead of JavaScript.
Perfect. Yep.
Now we started breaking those out into Rust. So now even our extensions are becoming Rust programs instead.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. So then the final question is there anything we didn't ask you about that you really want to cover? And, if you have anything you want to tease for recent or quickly upcoming that, is on the horizon, you can do that here too.
Oh man, it's so open-ended and I've got so much going on. I don't know. I don't know what to say. 2010, 2110, is it 20? It's 21. 2110 is coming out next October. We have some nice improvements coming to Pop! OS with that release. The Oryx Pro is coming back, I hope this week or next week, that because of supply chain problems has been out for a while. And we have enormous news coming in December that I can't tell you about.
I love my Oryx Pro. That thing's that was the first System76 machine I bought. 17 inches, 18 pounds or something. That thing is a beast, and I love it.
Yeah. Today, the one that will be shipping this week is all the power, a fraction of the size. I'm on the current generation of the Oryx, and it's nothing like it was before.
I bought mine in 2016. Yeah, nice.
All right. Well, Carl, thank you so much for being with us. It was a blast today to have you. I feel like we played a little bit of ping pong with the topics because there were so many different things we wanted to ask you about. And you've just been a trooper. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Anytime, I'd love to come back.
Nice to meet you, Carl. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, yep. I think we'll have to do that. After December comes, we'll probably have more stuff to talk with you about. Leo and Shawn, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I could go another hour, but I know Leo's got to do Windows Weekly. So.
Oh, my God. What a come down. Oh, my God. The only good thing about Windows is almost every PC can run Linux. And Pop! OS installs so beautifully on Lenovo's, on Dell's. I've run it on HP's. It's beautiful. So, in fact, it
runs good on VMs. That's what I installed it on just
VMs.
Yesterday. Yeah.
The only thing I could get, I had a HP Spectre, beautiful hardware. The only kind of Linux I could get running on it was Pop! OS. So, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll find different distros work better, depending on the hardware. Pop! OS works out of the box almost everywhere. It's pretty amazing.
I like that. I mean, they have the different installer, right? If you have an NVIDIA card or AMD / anything else, I mean, you can use a different installer that doesn't have to try to be a fits-all thing. I mean, having 2 installers is a good thing. It's awesome.
Yeah, they're really smart.
All right. Well, I want to let you know about next week. We've got another great show coming. Doc should be back, and we're talking with Daniel Maslowski about OpenIPC, which is open source replacement firmware for cameras, for IP cameras. And, there's something in the news just this past week where a whole bunch of cameras, I believe made by Hikvision, which is, they make a lot of the cameras regardless of the name that's pasted on them. There is a network RCE, a vulnerability where you can send a packet and become root on these cameras. And so, maybe replacing the firmware with something open source would be a good idea. So that is coming next week, and you definitely don't want to miss that. Shawn, do you have anything you want to plug before we let everybody go?
No. So normally I would plug my comic. So, I mean, you can always go to my comic. Oh, look at that. See, that's even today's comic. Leo, can I inject a question for your next show?
Sure.
I'm curious if the new pencil on the Surface, if you can turn off touch on the screen and just use a pencil. Like right now I have to use a Wacom tablet because that's the only thing that you can turn off touch and still use a pencil. I want to be able to lay my face on the screen and still draw without my face causing issues.
I will ask. It's my memory on my studio that I could do that. That may be a hardware specific. Okay. But it was my memory on the Surface I could. The Surface Studio came with the Microsoft Pen. But I'll ask Paul. He'll know.
Okay, because I'm really curious about that. Right now I'm stuck with only Wacom hardware, which is great, but I'd like to have options.
So you do your cartoon with a Wacom, and then what computer are you? Okay.
It's on a Mac Mini. I use I use Pixelmator Pro.
Is that what you used to do your cartoon? That's cool.
I do, yeah. Cool. I wish that it was cross-platform, so right now I'm stuck on a Mac because it only works there. And again, it's just, I've been using it for a long time, so it's what I'm used to.
Ever going to do it for anything but a Mac.
No, I don't think so either. Focused. It would have to be, I would have to learn something new. And I mean, come on, that's not going to happen.
That's cool. That's really cool. And you do the lettering and everything?
No, it's a font.
Yeah.
I mean, I type it with my keyboard.
With your little fingers. Yes.
Yeah. No, all the drawing. Yeah, it's just big squares. That's it.
That's fun. I mean, hey, if XKCD can make it work with stick figures, then why can't you do it with squares? That's great.
That's right. Exactly. And I use colors.
Yeah.
Look at that. With colors.
Fancy.
Okay, well, I will plug 2 things. First off, the over at Hackaday, you can catch my work. Every Friday morning, the security column goes live, and I know we will be talking about PoE cameras, because there is a big problem in those. And then, of course, all of the other things going on. We'll probably also cover the VoIP provider that's getting DDoSed and all kinds of stuff from the week's worth of news. And then the other thing is you should really get on Club TWiT and come join us on the Untitled Linux Show because we have a blast there. Leo, do you get to plug anything? I don't know how this works. You haven't been on it so long.
I don't plug anything. I got nothing to plug. I'm just sitting here.
All right. Well, hey,
it was learning Lisp, that kind of thing,
It was great to have you along today. I appreciate you coming.
Oh, I'm glad you allowed me because, as you know, I've been a big fan of this company for a while and I had lots of questions. So thank you for letting me be on.
Yeah, I feel like we did pretty well. We covered a lot of stuff today. So it was a good show.
I just want to buy more stuff now. That's never healthy. I just want to. I like.
Oh, those Thelios. They're so pretty.
Yeah, right. Black walnut. It'd go really good on my desk.
Yep. All right. Well, that is all that we've got time for. Make sure to tune in next week, and we will see you then on FLOSS Weekly.
If you find yourself talking to those virtual assistants in your house quite often, or maybe you can make your light turn on and off with the touch of a button, well, Smart Tech Today is the show for you. Join Matthew Casanelli and myself, Micah Sargent, every week as we talk all about smart stuff and the fun that comes along with it.